Welcome to Know Your Fundamentals. I'm Kelly Berthold, licensed clinical social worker, wellness educator, and coach. Join me as I connect the foundational science of mental health, emotional intelligence, and human flourishing with real-life practical tools you can apply in your relationships, leadership, career, and personal growth. Each episode blends research-backed insights with lessons drawn from the unique experiences of our remarkable neighbors, uncovering patterns that build resilience, strengthen connection, and elevate well-being. You're the expert on your life, and I'm here to help you build the foundation so you can truly thrive your way. Let's get started. Hi, we're excited to welcome Chris Danilo, a facilitator and trainer with a passion for building emotionally intelligent educators and teams. In this episode, Chris will explore how emotional intelligence forms the foundations for healthy relationships, resilient classrooms, and empowered educators. He'll discuss the neuroscience of fear, motivation, and psychological safety, and how they can transform culture and leadership. So, Chris, welcome to the Know Your Fundamentals podcast.
Hey, Kelly. Thanks for having me. I'm so psyched to be here. It's so cool to be with you.
Yeah, it's been awesome even just like testing audio and things with you for a few minutes. So, so talking about like psychological safety, neurobiology of fear, being educated on these kind of things and talking about them like, oh yeah, all these like intersect together. But for someone who's like new and learning about what even psychological safety means, that's a fairly new term that is especially kind of thrown around a little bit more in like businesses.
Yeah, for sure.
And management. So give us like a brief overview of what you do and for whom and what these things mean to you.
Totally. So most of my work is with educators, and my job is basically to fly around the country and work with people who are educating kids ages 0 to 5 years old. And that is a really hard job because a lot of reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is that you're managing not only your team and your organization and your own values, but you're also working with kids who have lots of different personalities, and they're testing the boundaries of what they know and their own personality and who they are. And you also have their parents, those personalities. And so there's a lot of kind of confluence here. And it makes the job a really challenging one. Having people who understand kind of the value of emotional intelligence and the power of it being a good skill is sort of like the sweet spot that I feel like all of my attention has to go into and supporting. So that's my job, is to support them. I do that with workshops, like full day workshops, virtual workshops, and trainings. One of the best ways to work with those organizations is just the professional development channel, like they're used to experiencing it that way. So that's most of the job.
Yeah. I think something that's really special about social emotional education is that it's intergenerational. So we have to be able to speak to the development of a developing mind, and a lot happens from 0 to 5. So like if that's a niche, that's a niche. Like you could probably even say like a 3 to 5 year olds are like a niche, but you have to really understand how our human bodies and our brains just kind of function, right? Because if you think about like an onion, it's like we're always the core of that onion. We just kind of build up these layers over time, but we always have to learn how to speak, or it's beneficial to learn how to speak to the core of who we are as human beings. So what is it that like brought you into doing, like social emotional education and trainings?
It's like there's the short version. I'll try to give you the short version because the long version is really long. But basically, I just fell in love with philosophy and like frameworks of thinking, and like how do smart people become smart, and how do we turn really young, new human brains into really amazing, happy, productive, healthy adult brains. Like that path is like just really interesting to me. So I found myself getting into psychology and getting into neuroscience, and I was like, cool, I want to be a neuroscientist. And then I managed a lab at Penn State where I met a person named Kelly. And that's a cool experience that we get to share.
Yeah.
And we worked together in that neuroscience lab, and we were looking at, development and just working with some really smart, brilliant people. And at some point I was like, hey, we're working with people who are really smart, who are adding lots of leaves to the tree of knowledge. And I think what I need to do is help get those into schools and into teachers' hands. And so I think they're killing it. Like, I'm not the smartest person in the room. Like, they don't need my help. Like, I think I need to go over
Downplaying,
here.
but yeah,
No, but
go ahead.
that's how I felt. It was just like, hey, like, I think they got this down. I'm gonna go do this other thing. And so that was sort of the short version of my path to figuring out that, helping our adult educators work with the youngest, most, high developing group of kids that exist. That was clear to me. Like, this is what I need to spend my career on. If I get one opportunity to pull the lever of a career, and I have one career to offer the planet, like, that's the one. Like, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, yeah. I think what's so special about that, I love talking about outreach. I
Yeah.
remember because when I met you, I had just moved back from working in the film industry for like
Yeah,
multiple
that's right.
years.
Yeah.
And I was so passionate about like the outreach element. And that's what later
Yeah.
I got my master's in social work because I wanted to do outreach, prevention, and
Hmm.
education. Because I'm like, there's so much research happening out in the world, and the trickle down is like 20
Yeah.
years. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, we got to invest
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
outreach. Where
Yes.
are like our outreach
Yeah.
people at? You know,
Right.
where's the money in outreach? It's like, oh, well, I
Yeah.
did this research. It's like, have I seen it? Where has it
Right.
actually been implemented in
Yeah.
society and culture? Ah, well,
Yeah.
it hasn't. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
and then what are all the things that kind of are getting in the way of that? So I think that people who are passionate about research, well, it's so important. Like having to hyper focus and niche
Yeah.
into these, keyhole
Yeah.
elements that like, together are like creating progress, right, and understanding the
Yeah.
world. But if it's not shared, where there's not like this mass understanding,
Yeah.
we need like understanding en masse. We need
Yeah.
it to be proliferated. Like I will
Right.
not be satisfied until, all the people of the world have access, with
Yeah.
this information. So like
Yeah.
for me, like that's how passionate I am about it. So like
Right.
where is it for you that you became like
Yeah.
passionate about the outreach element where
Yeah.
you became
Yeah.
aware of like maybe I'm curious about research, but I'm figuring out where is it that like it fits me, right?
Hmm.
And my interests.
Yeah, I thought for sure when I graduated college, like, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a scientist. Like, totally. That's my jam. That's what I want to do. And once I got into it, it was clear, like, okay, exactly like what you're saying. There's kind of two problems. We have an intellectual barrier and we have a financial barrier. So all the publication, all the research, all this information that's coming out, we have a financial barrier in that you got to buy the journal and it's like published and it's got to have grant funding. And like, it's like, you can't, not everybody gets access to that information, even though so much is free on the internet. A lot of those, Elsevier and all these publications and journals, are paywalled. And then you've got your intellectual barrier, meaning all these papers are written with the same lingo and jargon and in a language that like is impossible for like the layperson to interpret, right? Like,
Yeah, like a
it's just there's
25 reading level. Like what if you're
right,
like, it's like most, and just to inform like the audience a little bit, like when we're trying to like write things for people to understand in mass, it's usually around like an eighth grade reading level.
mhm,
And much of these papers are written to be so intellectual that unless you're a part of that
yeah,
niche, it's
right.
really, really
It's
hard to
hard.
understand and bring like understand what those
Exactly.
takeaways even mean outside
Yeah.
of just quantifiable,
Yep.
numbers and
Right.
statistics.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So you sit in the room long enough and you're like, the awareness component is very much like, hey, we have these two really kind of fundamentally tragic barriers that are just colossal. So like, this is happening. We've got these two barriers. And then if you poke your head over the wall and you look into a classroom and you talk to a teacher, they're like, yeah, dude, just tell me what to do. Like, I have a kid who's a nightmare and I love this kid, but like, I don't know how to help. Like, I just don't know. Like, I'm trying everything. I was chatting with a friend of mine who also is named Kelly, and she's a teacher and she works with special students with special needs. And it's remarkable what these teachers will do to figure out how to solve the puzzle. She's like trying to teach this kid like addition and subtraction, and it's not going in. And for like weeks, the kid doesn't get it. My friend Kelly uses popsicle sticks and it works. And I was like, Kelly, you're a genius. She was like, it's like the people like that who are willing to do the work, they're there every day. They love the kids more than anybody in the whole world. And they're showing up and they're doing everything. But it's like giving them all the tools and skills and like, how do we just accelerate them um, to move faster and in like that positive growth direction? So, I'm peeking over the wall of like, let me look in the classroom and see what's going on, and looking at the disconnect, this chasm between our education system and research. And everyone's complaining. It's like, man, we need more research to get here. We need this, that. And I'm looking at it. And I'm like, okay, like that's me then. Like it's got to be me. No one else is. No, like I'm the connector then. Like I got to be the guy. I have to be in between. And so that's my new job. And I didn't know what. Like there's no. You can't go to monster.com and like look up that. So I didn't know what to do. And I got myself into like, I was working in ed tech because at the time I was like, oh, there's a really cool intersection of technology and education. Like there's something magical that can happen here. So I was like consulting with ed tech companies and like, getting in the private sector, just getting my hands dirty and trying to figure it out. And the winding path of like, okay, well, let me try this. Like for many years, I was running these large scale Lego and Minecraft shows for kids. Like, why can't we use fun to educate kids? Like, why is that not a thing that's happening? So just kind of like going through this winding path and finding myself here, which is funny because it feels like I've very much recentered on the work that we were doing in that lab, which was very much on like emotional, like attention and vigilance to like fear stimulus. Like how is fear impacting our ability to make decisions? That's what we
Yeah.
were looking at in kids. So like, it's just cool that it all kind of is like coming back and whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah. So, did you find like when you were younger, were there certain things that just fit with you, like your personality, that led you to feeling like outreach, for example,
Mhm.
requires engagement? So to be able to feel comfortable engaging with
Yeah.
new people and fairly
Yeah.
frequently, like
Yeah.
it's unpredictable. Like, so if you're doing research, and I'm not saying this is an easy path, and it's a much more straightforward path. I want to do research. You know
Hmm.
what that path looks like.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
challenges are really getting accepted and finding a faculty member or a program that
Hmm.
fits within your interests. And then you just continue to go for it and then hope that you can apply for jobs and you're getting landing into research
Hmm.
institutions or academia and to continue on that path.
Yeah.
What you were just describing in your experience with outreach is that it is not linear and it
No.
requires a lot of exploration
Yeah.
because it isn't clear how you can take that interest and help people. And so what I actually hear when people are saying, I think we need more research is, no, you
Yeah.
don't. You don't
Right.
actually need
Yeah.
more research. You think you need more research because you don't actually know what you need. And what you
Right.
do actually need is someone to engage with
Yeah.
you and provide you information that you can actually apply to your life or to
Yeah.
apply to the students.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we tend to use like, we need more research. It's like,
Right.
where's that coming
Yeah.
from? I
Yeah.
always like,
Yeah.
I didn't ask this question before, but now because I see so much, it's like there's so much research happening. There's
Hmm.
all the money is in research. So where is it that like the missing piece is actually in just the attainment? So
Yeah.
for you, like where was it that you found like in your experience that this fits for you and your
Hmm.
own unique interests? Like it fits
Mm.
with like how you like to
Yeah.
socially engage with people. It fits with like maybe this natural sense of like exploration and adventure, right? So are there like traits within yourself that you feel like that just feels right for you and in this kind of pursuit? Not that it's always comfortable,
Yeah. No, I get
and
what
at
you're
the same time
saying.
it fits with like your puzzle pieces, like, oh,
Yeah.
this aligns just kind of
Totally.
right.
That's actually a cool question because it's a fun question to answer because there was like, so my kind of like cadence here is roughly once a year. I'm sort of changing this pattern now after doing it for like 10 years. It's becoming a little different. But like, I'd say like once a year, I usually sit down with myself and I do kind of like a pretty uncomfortable self audit. And it's like, am I making progress on these specific things? And is this happening? What, like, am I interested in that? Like, what did I learn from this experience? What am I taking away from this job that I had that I no longer have? What did I learn from it? And like, okay, what am I going to do differently about it? This year or the next like phase. And the one of the last cycles of that, it manifested in this document that I put together that was very much like, okay, I'm going to write my kind of dream job that does like it checks all my boxes of like it pays me what I need to make, the comp that I need to make. It checks the box of like my fulfillment. It's like, it just does all the things that I kind of want it to do. And then on this other piece of paper, on the other side, I'm going to write like kind of the day-to-day job description of what, like the job ad, basically. Like, here's what we need you to do. And I wasn't going to worry about, the conflicts of like, do you need to work on a team or do you like working by yourself? Like, I'm just going to write it. I'm just going to fill it out. I'm not going to worry about like what is right or wrong about it. Like, I'm just going to kind of just, put this out on the paper. And one of the parts of that was really important to me was like realizing that the only way I was going to be able to sustain like a high output kind of high performance approach was if I was going to do stuff that was easy for me, but hard enough for other people that it was expensive. So like, for example, facilitation is like not everybody wants to do that work. Not everybody wants to be in front of people like doing something. And there's this kind of like fundamental difference between being a speaker and being a facilitator and like, the sage on the stage versus like, I'm trying to make people have conversations and make that easier
Like
and like,
workshopping kind of
yeah,
things.
like
Yeah.
eliciting responses versus I'm just going to tell you the answers that we could have just, I said, I could have sent you an email with a PDF. Like, that's not helpful. Like, people don't want the information. They think they want the information, but they don't want the information. What they want is an experience that's emotional, that will tie that information and send it into long-term memory and in a way that they will never forget. And now they get to practice that together in an environment that's like low risk. And then they can have that confidence of like, okay, maybe we can take this information and turn it into practice. And like, I have this memory, I have this experience, I have this data about myself that I can do it. And now coming out of the workshop, like, you should have all that. And there you go and fly away. So that's really what I think the outcome needs to be. But like, I realized like, okay, that's something that I can do that is hard and expensive and valuable. And so I need to figure out how to make this impact and check all these boxes and like in this intersection of like, well, it's going to be in this kind of public speaking facilitation space. So what is out there? Google, click, 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 right? And then that's when I started like, okay, well, who's doing this kind of work? And you're like, oh, people do this, like, cool. Like, and you start to realize like, I guess I need to talk to these people. And I reach out to these people and hey, what are you working on? And I just had a bunch of phone calls and like, and you're off. Like, it's not linear, but I think if you just follow for at least for me, it was like, what is the thing that's sustainable that I can maintain, that's going to be, financially sustainable, emotionally sustainable. I have room for growth in my career. Like, my day to day isn't, I don't hate every part of my day to day. Like, like I'm doing all of those things, and then I'm just going to follow that thread. So I don't know if I answered your question or if I over answered it.
No, I don't think you over answered it at all. But I think what actually is useful is that you kind of connected those dots of like, those foundations of flourishing. Like, I was
Mm-hmm.
willing to be curious and aware
Yeah.
of myself and seeing, the full reality of my existence and the full reality of situations, and not try to sugarcoat or try to like amplify a situation or exaggerate it. And I'm not
Yeah.
minimizing or blocking. Being able to see things clearly as they actually are allows us to make more proactive choices that are going to help us get to our short term and our long term, more likely positive outcomes than if we're, just kind of writhing in either trying to persuade ourselves for things that don't really exist, or again, we're shutting things down because we feel fear, and actually being present with
Yeah.
discomfort.
Yeah.
A really important aspect, I think, for anyone to be successful in their own flourishing. So
Yeah.
like my whole thing is, thrive your way. And so
Right.
what that
Right.
means is to learn how to trust yourself, that you have the capability and the competency, when you can
Mm-hmm.
see things as they truly are in reality, that you can thrive,
Mm-hmm.
right, in ways that actually work for you if you
Mm-hmm.
can exist in being curious with everything. But it's our fear that actually blocks us from seeing things, and
Yeah.
that blocks us from actual choices that are going to lead to
Yeah.
those long-term and short-term outcomes, again, that are about our own unique interests. So if we want to have that fulfillment, we have to practice awareness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you being able to do all those other steps that come with awareness leads to insight. If you didn't have that awareness, you wouldn't have that insight. It's not that the process
Yeah.
again is like, well, that
Right.
awareness and insight has led me to not have to have these 10 years of my life
Yeah. Yeah.
experience, right? It's like I
Yeah.
still had to go through
Right.
this life
Right.
experience because it's about the experience, right? But the experience provides
Right.
insight, right? So
Yes.
like
And this
we
is
can
the
be
most
aware of all
difficult
this
part.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So awareness, insight leads to deeper connection with ourselves and other people, which then leads to deeper, more meaningful living
Yeah.
and meaningful, purposeful activity. And that's purpose.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of information and experiential practices in life that
Yeah.
leads to wisdom. You cannot be
Mm.
a wise person without experiences.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So like being
Yeah.
able to have like this combination of it's information and experience, and we're all drowning in
Hmm.
information. Like there's an
I
ocean
know.
of information
Yeah.
and no, they're just flowing out there. It's like
Yeah.
I might be 3,000 miles
Yep.
into like the great Atlantic,
Yes.
and apparently there's a boat or a bridge that could get me to the other side, but
Yeah.
I am not equipped to know how to get myself there. And that's how I
Yes.
think everyone right now is just experiencing wellness. We have so much information, so much science, so much research. We also have a lot of disinformation and,
Yeah.
people who are bringing things back from like 1820 that,
Yeah. I know. I
should
know.
have
I
been
know.
dead and
Yeah.
buried.
I
And they're
know.
like, oh, what about this? I'm like, no,
Not at
like,
all,
right.
actually. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah. I thought
competing
we fixed
against
that
each other.
already. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
have all this competition. So it's not, we can't just say, well, I'm aware that I saw, that I could, oh, I was going to say something terrible, but
Yeah.
I'm trying to
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
something that's more appropriate. So I'm
Good luck.
aware that someone is telling me to take so and so 5 times a day. I'm aware of
Hmm.
that. And now I just
Hmm.
feel like I have to believe what
Hmm.
someone is just like randomly telling me. But the difference there is the insight. Like I need to
Yeah.
be willing to have that deeper
Yeah.
insight, and I need to be willing to be aware that there's
Yeah.
limitations here so I can
Yeah.
navigate.
Yeah.
For you, like it sounds like you were able to kind of just learn along the way to just be okay with maybe your own fears and to tap into how that supported your motivation that then
Hmm.
drove behaviors
Yeah.
and drove your experiences.
Yeah.
Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about like how you take what you know about these concepts and you
Yeah.
embrace them and practice them in your own life?
Yeah. Definitely. There's this really important like feature of fear that's, we know that it's an alarm system. We know that it's supposed to alert us to a threat. We know that it's this ancient part of our brain that used to respond to lions and tigers and bears, and now we're responding to, social extrication and ostracization. And like we know it's a social and like it gets triggered all in our new world. And now we're like on Instagram and we're getting our fear that way. So like there's like we know kind of the modern landscape of what this looks like. And we know, I think most people understand kind of, at least on a broad scale, kind of the purpose and what it's for. But I don't know that we are consciously like probing at it and saying like, okay, well, like why? Because what's weird is like a lot of the time it's actually a really good signal that helps us understand, a little bit more about ourselves and maybe like something that we need to work on or something we need to pay attention to, either develop or delete, from our belief system. So there's just like it's a really good flag. I think it's useful in being this kind of like geographical marker for things and like cueing you in on where to pay attention. I think it's on the flip side can be really distracting and dangerous if we're unable to disconnect from it. And this is exactly the work we did at Penn State, which was understanding how for a lot of people it's real when something bad happens, it's really hard to disconnect from that fear. It's really hard to disconnect from it. Like if you and I are walking down the street and we're having a conversation and we're just chatting and then 2 other people are walking the other way and one of them is yelling really loudly and and it's an argument and we pick our heads up and we're like, oh God. And then we realize like, okay, it's loud, but it's not like going to be violent. So we kind of just go back to our conversation. They pass us and we're chatting and you turn to me and you go, does that make sense? And I go, what? And you're like, you look at me and you tell me you've seen somebody have this look on their face where you've been talking to them and they are glassy eyed, like they don't see it. And like you realize in that moment, like you didn't hear a word I said because I was still listening to that conversation because it might still, I don't know, for some reason I got to know how that went, or like, are they going to come back, or like, I can't disconnect from that. And that's a really regular, normal human thing. Some people have that experience more than others. Like everything, it's on a spectrum. And so there's that. But that's a very normal human experience to be in this place where it's really difficult to disconnect from that threatening thing and just kind of like let it go. We call that rumination. Like that's, I think, the fancy word for it. But I think and most people have had an experience like that. So I think there's two edges to it. Sometimes it's really helpful to pay attention to it, and instead of avoiding that fear, being like, okay, but why don't I want to get up in front of people? Right? And this is the space where it's so easy to lie to ourselves. So it's helpful to like have a buddy who could like help you navigate this, right? That I think like pointing out that there's kind of two edges. Do I need to pay attention to this? Do I need to zoom into this because it could be really, really helpful flag on the play? Or is this something I can't stop thinking about and I need to, it's like, it's preventing me from focusing on the thing I need to focus on. I think the ultimate kind of signal is like, am I making progress on my goals? If you're not, then it's either like, well, what's distracting me or pulling my attention away from doing it? Or is it like, what am I avoiding? What work am I avoiding to make that not happen? So like, I think that's your kind of goal, North Star. But fear is really, really helpful because it usually points you to the place where you need to put out, whether it's right or left, rumination or avoidance. Like it's a helpful marker to know where to pay attention. And then there's the what do you do about it, which is the second step. But yeah.
Yeah. So like part of like my thing is like befriending your boogeyman, right? And
Right.
I have like
Yeah.
a little boogie, and it's just like it's a
Nice.
boogie and not like a boogeyman. So it's just like it was just
Right.
a misunderstanding. It's like
Right.
the
That's
little cute
cute.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
I made a shirt for my son, and he didn't want to wear it for like the first year, and now
Right.
he's like, I'm not wearing a boogie on my shirt. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so
Classic.
cute.
Right.
But like I think befriending your fear, that
Yeah.
we have all these aspects of
Yeah.
ourselves that are not, they're not us, right? Like it's
Mhm.
our crew.
Yeah.
And fear is like a co-captain. Like it's
Right.
high up on,
Yeah. Yeah.
the positions. And fear as a co-captain also has its own team of anxiety and
Yes.
worry
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
even sadness. Like it
Right.
corresponds with all these other emotions, and they like converse with each other
Yeah.
and say like, oh, well, what about the future?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, let me hear intel with that.
Right.
So if we could have like a brain trust
Yeah.
where you're like the president and you have like all
Yeah.
these, informants of your body that have been around for
Yeah.
millions and millions of
Right.
years,
Right.
there's information there.
Yeah.
But if we get caught into just giving fear the wheel just
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, you're president again, just take
Yeah.
over. It's like, well, I'm
Yeah.
going to drive into this building. It's like, well,
Right.
if you feel
Right.
like you need to do that, man, then
Yeah.
go into the building. It's like,
Right.
okay,
Right.
well,
Yeah. Right. Not
fear,
productive.
not productive. So is it a
Productive. Yeah.
fear-based decision, or
Right.
is it a personal, unique choice, like
Right.
trust-based decision?
Right.
And so like when we feel like we're in those forks of the road, it's, so like social anxiety. Well, I'm afraid to
Yeah.
go to a concert. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that may exist. Will it bring you
Yeah.
joy to go to that concert if you
Right.
could exist without fear? Well,
Right.
yeah, but I don't think I could. I think I'll just be overwhelmed by it. Well, fear will learn through exposure.
Right.
Go.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have to approach things. That's how
Yeah.
our body learns competency, and to not keep driving into buildings when
Yep.
fear's like, you want me to do this thing? It's like,
Yeah.
well, train it.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
train our emotional experiences by accepting them, being aware of them, getting insight
Yeah.
from them, and then deciding how we want to proceed. And that your emotion is not your personality. It's not a
Yeah.
part of, so it's a crew
Yeah.
member.
For
It has
sure. Yeah.
information, but it's not
That's a
you.
good way to look at it. It's a part of the puzzle. I think probably the best articulation of this has got to be Inside Out, the movie.
Yes.
I remember it came out right when we were in our lab, and our lab, like, it might have been before you joined, because our whole lab like went out to the movie like 2 days after it debuted and like saw it. And usually I'm really grumpy about these things. I'm like, oh, they're gonna get this wrong, they're gonna get that wrong, and it was like really good. And I was like, oh my God, I'm shocked at how well this went.
Yeah.
And you get to see, I won't spoil it, but in the second Inside Out, you get to see like just how useful anxiety is. It's like, yeah, none of these things are perfect all by themselves. That's why they're all working in this system with checks and balances. And if it's imbalanced, then you start to have these problems, and it can elicit all kinds of fun behavior. But yeah, we're in this weird balance of push and pull. There was another example I was gonna get into for fear, which is if you've ever, maybe this is you, maybe this is someone you know, and I'm talking to you, but also everybody who's listening to this. Has anyone ever tossed something like a physical object in the air, like a keys or a ball, tennis ball, and you go like you flinch? Right? Or you do this thing, like it's just such a clear, really easy way to see, like, okay, this person is not either ready for this interaction or like maybe they don't know how to catch, right? And they're just like uncomfortable with like that kind of an engagement. The way to fix it, if you like need to learn how to get comfortable with something flying at you, is literally like you and I stand 2 feet away from each other and I hand you an object and you take the object and then you hand it back to me. And then I take one step back and then I gently toss you and then you catch it. And then I take another step back and then we just keep doing that until you're catching. And then all of a sudden, like you didn't know. Well, we weren't going to start that far away. I wasn't going to say, hey, go to that concert filled with 1 million people. Like maybe we just go to we hang out with a couple friends. I mean, and then we add like, okay, well, that was a group of 15 people. Like, where do we go to get like 25 people? Like maybe we go to this other thing. And then like that's like one approach that I feel like is underrated.
Absolutely. Stepping
You know?
stones and like increasing the frequency, duration, and the
Yeah.
intensity of like doing things and the
Yes.
practice and repetition. So start wherever is the first available like stepping stone. And if it feels too big, and you may be familiar of like a
Yeah.
Daniel Siegel's like window of tolerance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like if
Yeah.
it feels too far of your window of tolerance, you're not
Mhm.
going to do it.
Right.
And you can't not do anything. So find
Right.
something that is
Right.
still within your window that makes you a little uncomfortable, but isn't intolerable, like isn't setting you
Yes.
on fire or
Right.
freezing you out. And it still allows you to build up that exposure, like you're doing even just with like the clementine in your
Right.
hand. I'm
Right.
assuming that was a clementine.
It
So
sure was. It's
it sure was.
delicious.
Yes. I'm like, is that a little cute squeeze ball? It's like, no, that's a clementine. It's like, okay.
No,
So
Clementine.
but like, yeah, I think that was a really good, step two that like I was
Yeah.
like, oh, just like throw yourself in the fire with like the concert. But
No,
like
but
what we do
you're
actually need is those stepping stones, but
right.
we need it repetitively. If you do it once every
Yes.
6 months, it's not going to be the same thing. You're not
Right.
going to notice the same benefit. But
Right.
if you're consistently doing it, right, that
Yeah.
our body's learning those habits and those neural connections
Yeah.
through the practice and repetition. And it says, if this,
Right.
then this, if this, then this. Well, now
Yes.
I'm strengthening these little dirt paths
Right.
into, I kind of use like the analogy sometime of like, I've got the 405 6-lane highway of my fear center, right? It's like cars are
Yeah.
going up and
Yeah.
down like
Yeah.
75 miles per hour. You got
Yeah.
motorcycles like zooming through.
Yeah.
It's like that
Yeah.
brain knows exactly what it's doing. You don't have
Right.
to teach it a thing.
Right.
And your positive thinking and
Yeah.
proactive thinking and taking a moment to critically think or do whole brain thinking and like,
Mhm.
hey, emotions, what do you have to say? Hey, fear, what do
Right.
you have to say?
Right.
What do I want for myself? When we tap into that and we do that more consistently and repetitively, and even just these micro moments of a day, we take these little dirt paths and we turn
Yeah.
them into 2-lane highways. But like it requires attention, it requires
Yeah.
energy. Strengthening
Mhm.
any physically, mentally, emotionally, anything that you want to get better at, it requires more caloric energy. And your body's like,
Yeah.
let me just get back on the 405. I
I
know the
know.
405. Just let
Yeah.
me, it's like, you can't take that everywhere,
Yeah.
brain. We
Yeah.
also have to like, strengthen
Yeah.
these other things, but construction is or requires a lot of investment. So if you want to strengthen roads, you got to put money into roads, and your
Yeah.
money is your energy. So coming back again to like for you, like I know for me,
Mhm.
like in the work that I do, it's my own experiential understanding that helps me like help other people more deeply. So like, and they say something to me, I go, oh, I know the science and I know the
Mhm.
skills and I know how I experience it. And let
Mhm.
me help translate that for you,
Yeah.
not just like giving you a definition, but saying like,
Mhm.
how would this relate to you as a person? Because I
Yeah.
understand how it would relate to me as a person.
Mhm.
So how do you
Yeah.
incorporate those skills into your life where you feel like
Yeah.
that helps you share the wealth?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think there's so much of the internet that's I shouldn't say the internet. There's so much of like the self-help like universe that is, here are the 8 numbers I used to win the lottery. And so I can share them with you, but like they may not work for you the same way that they work for me. Cause like, we have different experiences and different, triggers and traumas and all these things that like could be different. And like, yeah, we have a lot of the same principles and hardwiring and all these things. But experientially, sometimes we resonate with this and not with that. And so I find like what perfect example is, so I'll give you a perfect example. I just did this in a workshop. And if you're listening to this on YouTube or at home, like just cross your arms, like whatever way is natural, for you. And now that they're crossed, I want you to cross them the opposite way. So flip your hands over, put the other arm on top or whatever. Most people just were like, oh, why was that so uncomfortable? And so like you could drop your arms and put your arms back.
I just
But
put
like
my arms back to where they were originally. I'm like, I don't like that. So like I'm like, go back to the original bicep, Kelly. It's like, okay, yeah, I
right.
will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is your road, right? That's been paved, that's been set up for you. And I just asked you to take a different road and it was uncomfortable and new, right? And we all have that experience of being doing something that's like a little bit uncomfortable. And we're like, oh, that can't be right. That can't be right because that's not normal. That's not how it's supposed to go. Like I know this other way, even though we both can agree, it doesn't matter which arm is on top when you're folding your arms. There's no fundamental difference in structurally, like how that's set up. Like there's no comfort difference, just what you're used to. So I like starting out in that way because it's a really easy way to get everybody on the same page that like, I know what that feels like. I know what this minor discomfort feels like. And then it's easy for me to cue somebody up and say, hey, look, today in our workshop, like I'm going to ask you to do that a lot. So like we're gonna show up for it because we value our time and all these other things, right? So like I think starting out, like pointing out with something that's really basic, really low consequence, no risk, and is kind of silly and kind of fun. Like if we frame it and circle it in those terms, it's a lot easier for somebody to be like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like, all right, so we're gonna do stuff that's hard, right? And then I might challenge them to do something a little bit deeper. So for instance, in that same workshop, I printed out these little like cards, and on each card was just like something scary, like a spider or a snake or a tall building or a group of people or an open ocean or a tornado or like just like all these kind of random physical things that like people can be afraid of. And the question that I wanted them to answer was like, what is something that is speaking to you and your fear in your life from this like image? Like you don't have to say you're afraid of tornadoes. Like that's not what I want you to say. What I want you to say is like, well, it's the uncertainty of when it's going to strike. Like that's what I'm actually afraid of in my career and in my life. Like so I want you to see something about it and find the thing that's calling to you, right? And so like setting it up in that two-step punch, right? Where I'm like, cool, we're going to do something really safe that's a little bit uncomfortable, but it's going to prime your body and your brain to be like, ooh, okay. All right, I'm on board. I'm on board with this, but I don't necessarily but I'm okay with it. Like setting them up for that quick minor success, and then immediately coming in with like a heavier question that's like actually a social risk, where like, okay, I'm going to ask you to be a little bit in a uncomfortable position, and then maybe I'm going to ask you to share that with somebody, or like maybe I'm going to ask you to share that with a group. So like I think taking those laddered steps, which is very much based in obviously like the mechanics of fear. Like we're dialing down the physiological impact of fear by setting up that first primer in like a really comfortable setting. So we're able to kind of like neutralize that, but get them the idea so they're ready for the next step up. But it's also very much based in like Vygotsky's zones of proximal development, which is like, what can I do now with help? What can I do by myself? What can I do with scaffolded help? And like laddering up to that place where I can do it by myself is very much the concept. And then this is the practice. Like we know the science, like that's what the science says. Here's what, yeah, we know what the learner can do now, what they need support with, blah, 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 blah. But like, that's what it looks like in a workshop where we're actually doing it and the fears are coming out and people are sharing stuff and then they're having connections with each other and they're like, oh my God, I didn't know that about you. And we've been working together for 20 years. Right. And like, that's when like the magic actually starts to happen, is when we get that opportunity to like let that out a little bit and practice it. And then people go, I did something really hard today. Like I did something I didn't know I could do. And building up that data set of like, here's the stuff that I just did. That's what confidence is. Like I'm a person who will like look back at everything I've done in my 10 years of like navigating and winding and weaving and being like, yeah, why can't I just like focus on one thing? Why can't I be like a person who just has this career that just, I'm climbing the ladder like, all the time. I'm like, why can't I just go work for Deloitte and like just climb the like structure that's the ladder that's set up for me? Like, I just got to work. That's all you got to do is just, or like, it making it, why can't I make this easier for myself? Or like, man, what have I actually accomplished? Have I actually done this thing that I'm trying to do? Like, every time I have that conversation, I'm at the forefront of everything I've ever done. And so that's the time where it's like the most uncertain is always right now. And everything in the past is already done and very certain. And so like looking back at it, it's too easy to be like, oh, was that really the right thing? And like, should I blah, 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 blah. And like, so I'm a person who needs a lot of successful data in order to be like mildly confident about something. Like I need a ton of supporting evidence that says I've done this, and this. I think that's enough that I can now do. Like, I think I can do that. Like, that's the amount of volume that I need in order to like take another step. So I think for most people, I don't know, it varies. Your mileage may vary on that, but I think the concept is the same in like you're kind of like scaffolding and building up that database of like here's my work, here's my success, here are my small wins that have totaled up, and now I'm like able to take this next step. So
Yeah,
a little bit
I
of
think like
practice.
approaching like the fear, like you're learning how to like scaffold
Hmm.
confidence by building competence by approaching fear of the unknown and over and over and over again. And so like I know I used to a long time ago I'd be called like a bulldozer because I would just be like, I'll just go ahead into it. And I'd
Yeah,
be like,
yeah,
I don't even know, like, those
right.
old cartoons where your feet are kind of going and you don't
Yeah,
even know if there's like a road or anything
yeah,
underneath you.
yeah,
I'm like off the cliff and I'm still just like running through the air.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
that's just me. I've always been kind of like that. And I even now I tell
yeah.
myself all the time, it's like, why can't you just be satisfied? Your life would be
I
so
know,
easy
I know,
if
I
you
know,
just,
I know.
could just like,
Yeah,
why do you have to have this passion and interest? It takes so many extra hours of your
yeah,
life. You could have
right,
all this free time. You would
right,
be fine. It's like,
right,
but I wouldn't be satisfied.
right.
It wouldn't feel like I was doing the things that are so motivational to me. And if someone asked
Yeah,
me, well, could you just stop? It's like, no, because my feet are
yeah,
still off the cliff.
yeah,
I'm just still
right.
always running off the cliff. I'm doing a
Yeah,
trust fall on myself over and
yeah,
over and over again, and almost like compulsively.
yeah,
It's like, oh,
yeah,
there's Kelly. She's just doing another trust fall. It's like, yeah,
right,
just doing another
right.
one, and like feeling the free fall and like how it makes my body
Yeah,
feel. But and
yeah,
I'm not going to say I enjoy that feeling. I don't. And would I like to
right,
be able to just like see
right,
what's going to happen like a week and 3 months or 6 months from now? Yes,
right,
I would very much like to see those things. But are my feet going to stop moving?
right,
No, they are not going to stop
right,
moving. I'm existing with like
right.
tolerating this discomfort because I'm
Hmm.
saying I want this discomfort. It's motivating
Yeah.
for me because in DBT language, dialectical behavioral therapy
Oh, yeah,
language,
yeah.
like you have four options for solving a problem, and this wouldn't just be with DBT. Marsha Linehan was a Zen master, so like she's probably pulled these from like all sorts of different
Yeah.
kind of contemplative
We should get her on
perspectives in
this. Get her.
philosophy. Yeah, exactly. I could have so many conversations with her.
Yeah.
But you have four options for solving problems. One is
Yeah.
you can solve the problem. So what is then like, yes, my experience and what I'm feeling is saying that there is an issue. And, my emotion may be communicating a fear is there's a problem here. What do you need to do to solve the problem? Okay,
Hmm.
that's very straightforward, but you have to be able to see the problem in order to problem solve through it. You
Hmm.
can tolerate the problem, so you can
Sure.
accept both your emotional response to the
Yeah.
problem and the problem itself and just say, like, this is just how I'm going to feel. And this is
Yeah.
just what the problem is. And I'm just going to continue living and existing with the reality for what it is.
Yeah.
Or you can emotionally regulate your
Right.
response to the
Right.
problem. So you can maybe like say, well, I'm really angry about this thing. And maybe I can be more grateful for it. Or
Right.
I can like kind of like be more compassionate or think about it in a different
Yeah.
kind of way, or we can stay miserable or possibly
Right.
make it worse,
Right.
right? So option four is misery.
Right.
So for me, my roadrunner feet are I'm tolerating my
Yeah.
discomfort, and I'm constantly tolerating um the problem that is like I don't know where I'm going. I just know
Yeah. Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
to go
You're just
forward.
moving. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like for me, like when there's problems that are coming up, like, okay, I can problem solve. But most of my day-to-day
Yeah.
existence is in tolerating
Yeah.
my own discomfort
Yeah.
because I'm motivated with runner
Right.
language, relentless forward motion. Like I just
Yeah.
see
That's
this
right.
rope, invisible
Yeah.
rope in front of me. I'm just pulling myself along. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, is there going to be a break? It's like, you can stop at any time. I'm like,
Right.
no, I'm not going to.
Yeah.
But
All right.
maybe I
Yeah.
slow down sometimes. When we think about fear and like even
Yeah.
motivation, where is it that you connect?
Yeah.
You help people, and maybe even through your own experiences, you see that you can approach something and you can learn your
Hmm.
competence in approaching. But like, where's the motivation? I think
Mm,
maybe sometimes people get lost in, why am I motivated to do this in the first
yeah.
place? Why am I motivated to approach these fears? So can you speak
Hmm.
on that a little bit, per like our topic?
Yeah. This is a painful one because I don't think this is healthy. So I have to preface with this idea. Most of my motivation in my career has come from anger, which is really a bummer because it's really powerful in driving like my action. It's like, why isn't this better? This needs to be a better thing. Like, how come this sucks? Like our whole society, blah, 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 blah. And then I get mad and then I go, well, and then I go do a bunch of things. And that's fine. Like that is productive in that I have an output and I have a focus. And like
In
those
a
are
healthy
two.
one.
I
So
mean,
like, this is
so like,
a
sure, that
proactive.
that
Yeah.
is, you're right that that is a proactive way to manage fear or anger. But I will say, I had this realization like maybe 10 years ago where I was like, dude, this can't be good. Like you can't only be fired up when you're angry. Like that's not a sustainable way to like live your life. Like you don't want to be angry. Like when you get to the end of your life, if you live like that, then you're going to look back at your life and the whole life was going to be anger. Like you just lived in that world. Like your brain was just angry for 70 years, 75 years. Like, do you want that experience when you're looking back from your deathbed? Like, I was like, man, that doesn't feel right. Like, that can't be the way this goes down. Like, who do I want to be? Like, I want to be a person who, like, people are like, oh man, that guy just loved living life. Like that guy was full of energy, like positive. Like, I want that. Like, that's how I want it to be. Not like that guy was so angry and like got a bunch of stuff done. That doesn't feel like the way. So I had this realization that like, oh no, I'm going to have to figure out how to keep my motivation to change the injustice in the world without like being jaded enough to like be sort of like turn off my like I have to be at peace with the state of the world without losing my motivation to improve it. Like how will I balance those things? It's been 10 years since I've had this thought and I still don't know the answer. Like I'm still like trying to figure out like how am I going to hold both of those things? How am I going to keep going and not just like live in this like state? So I don't know that I have a really good satisfying answer for you other than my approach right now has been it's like making motivation smaller. So instead of having this giant burst of energy that like fuels a bunch of and getting fired up to like fuel the engine every day, it's being like quieter and smaller about like just chipping away at it. So like instead of like the perfect example, if we're going back to like a running mindset, right? Like a runner's mindset, it's too easy to be like, cool, I'm gonna go out and run a marathon from day one, like couch to marathon. It's like what happens when you try to do that? Like, yeah, there's grit and determination, and like maybe if you're so out of shape and what blah blah blah, maybe you could just finish it. But by the end of it, you're probably going to be pretty injured. It's going to be a horrible experience. You're going to probably be hurting. You're probably not going to be able to run for a while. You're probably have blisters. It's probably going to be like maybe you damage your knee because you don't have the right hip strength yet because you haven't worked on that, and like you got to remediate this and that, and like it's just probably not going to go well, even if you achieve your goal. So like I feel like if you make the motivation smaller and saying like, okay, I will just focus on this very small piece today. And my goal is to finish this today and then to be in a state of energy that I can do it again and again and again infinitely. Like that means I have to have a lot less energy so that every day I can show up with a consistent amount of it. So like that's like kind of where I'm trying to figure that out. So I'm like dialing all of my energy dials and my motion dials. I'm like, okay, like what are the right settings so that I can just show up and quietly chip away every single day. Like that's to me is like that's really cool. Like that is way more like the quiet badass is so much more cool to me than like a big loud like look what I did kind of movement. Like I'm just like so interested in that right now. So I don't know if I answered your question, but that I'm trying
Oh
to
man,
answer your
no.
question.
Yeah, I think with actually for I feel like I feel so seen right now because that's like my existence. And I remember my mom like saying things about me being like 3 years old and just very determined. And like
Yeah,
I've always
yeah,
been
yeah,
in this
yeah,
angry, like,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna seize the damn day, I'm gonna go out there, it's
Right, right.
Easter and I'm like picking up the eggs, like these are my
Yeah,
damn eggs, and
yeah, yeah,
like I
yeah,
do
yeah.
this. So like I think we all have these natural inclinations where like my body is my body. My body is
Yeah,
just like, man, again, like those roadrunner legs.
yeah,
And like I just go. But like I go also at my own detriment, right?
yeah,
So like I am frustrated, like I'm pissed off at all the things that are happening in the world. It's like, and I combine that with my interest, and then I go really hard. And I think that part of my life is learning how to downshift and
yeah,
making that downshift and also these other
yeah,
elements of life,
yeah,
more intentional. So like
yeah.
for me, the passion work is the automatic thing, but I
Right.
have to like slow down
Yeah,
and like, oh, you need to socialize. You need
yeah.
to like, enjoy hiking and being out in
Right.
nature and,
Yeah, yeah,
like playing with, like the dog for a few minutes, or
yeah,
taking like a nice walk where you
yeah,
are consciously aware of slowing down even your steps. So like downshifting, I think for people can be harder, and like finding the motivation to downshift.
yeah,
So if you find it harder to downshift and also like
yeah,
add
yeah,
these other, these, I guess it's just like the well-rounded life, having a
yeah, yeah,
well-rounded,
yeah.
happy,
Right,
I mean, happy is such a loaded word, but what I mean by that is just like a life that is full of like meaningful connections
right.
and experiences that are not just about doing something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Practicing being more. I think
right.
we all, especially in
Yeah,
Western cultures, it's ingrained in us, like socially, kind of like we're brainwashed into feeling like we have to be driven to a certain key
sure.
anyway. And some of us are also just naturally, biologically, a little bit more like that. And there's
Yeah,
individuals that are more naturally down regulated, and they may find it harder to find motivation to kind of like step it up a notch. So I think trusting ourselves, like exploring what anger means to me and how
yeah,
your anger is your anger. And
yeah,
although I can identify with what you're kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
sharing in that,
yeah.
it's like trying to like be grateful and appreciate that sense of anger and
Hmm.
injustice for how it's guiding my
Yeah,
purposeful work. And like again, like in the Inside Out movie, it can't
right,
just be anger
right,
hitting all the buttons all the time. You're going to burn
right.
yourself out, you're going to wear yourself out, and eventually you may even just like kind of tap out sooner, whether physically tapping out, like
Yes,
your body's like,
yes.
I'm done 10 years
Yep,
earlier than maybe
right,
I needed to be,
right.
or like you feel like you lost the passion or the interest because it's like
Hmm.
robbed of you, because you have
Yeah,
to, there needs to be reciprocity, there needs to be
right.
homeostasis in our experiences.
Hmm.
But for some of us, we kind of have to recognize where we go ham and go
Yeah,
really hard, and
yeah,
where we need to also practice building motivation for
yeah,
being and existing in all these other areas. Because when our body goes into habits of living and experiencing things, and when we slow down even from those habits, anxiety communicates and says, hey, did you know that you were shifting down here? You usually go 60, you're
yeah,
going
yeah,
25,
yeah, yeah,
what's
yeah,
up?
yeah. Right.
Right. And
Yes,
it's like, well,
classic. Yeah.
you need to be going and doing something. It's like,
Right.
well, actually, I don't. My body's just in the habit of going
Yeah.
really, really hard here.
Right.
And I need to exist with the anxiety because
Yeah.
right now I'm practicing being
Right.
and experiencing something else and building these roads out.
100%. I want to like piggyback on it for a sec because
Sure.
it is one of the hardest things to realize if like going into the runner thing, because I think there's so much value in using physical examples for things. Like for some
Sure.
reason, people like when you have a physical experience, it's easy to remember that in your body, and so like
Yep.
we communicate that way. But like if you're used to running, 15, 20 miles a week, and then you dial up and now you're doing 60 miles a week, 65 miles a week, like your body's like, whoa. And then you probably need to rest in order to like recover. And like I think one of the things that we fail to do, and the royal we here, is like
Mhm.
most of us think that like the workout is the productive part. We showed up, we lifted the thing, we put the thing down, we lifted the thing, we put it down again, we got on the treadmill, we hit the button, and then we went home, and then it was like, cool, I did it.
Strong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
And
I'm
it's like
strong
in
now.
reality, like we know
Yeah.
that that's not where the adaptation happens. We know that's not where the gains happen. The gains and adaptation happens when you're sleeping and you had your recovery and you had the right nutrition and like all that rest that you do the next day. That's where the adaptation happens. That's where all of your gains are. So like it needs to be viewed as this like whole package, and it's so hard to be like, oh, you know what, the most productive thing for me to do today is to literally like have my feet up, like to be horizontal today. Like that is actually the most productive thing for me to do. And I'm speaking about this because that was my yesterday. Was I was literally horizontal all day, right? And it was like, oh my god, like I got it, like this is miserable. Like I was like, oh, like
Yeah.
come on, a whole day, like I gotta be doing this and that, and like I have 40 other things, and I'll pull out my laptop and I'll be here, whatever, and that's fine. But like, oh my gosh, like what does that rest day mean? And like, what is the most essential part of this? Like, how do I not throw away all that hard work that I just did? I think the other thing you said that was really kind of cool and important was the downshifting thing, because I don't know if this is going to resonate with people who have never driven a manual car, but like when you downshift, in most scenarios, you gain traction. You like if you're driving down a hill or something and you're trying to slow the car down and you can't, like if you downshift, the engine actually is doing the work of slowing the car down and the brakes don't do as much. So like there's a ton of value in like the language and thought of like downshifting and what that actually means. Because I think it would be too easy for someone to be like, oh yeah, downshifting, yeah. And just be like, yeah, sure, I get it, but like I would never do that. Like, why would I ever do that? Like what I want to do is like keep going. Like I think there's, if you're gonna have a huge engine and you're gonna go really fast, like you should probably have good brakes. Otherwise, something
Yeah.
bad, really bad, could happen. Like I think that's clear. So I don't know. I just wanted to piggyback on that thought because I thought that was cool.
Well, I think, our internal experiences are a microcosm of the world around us. So we know, again, we have enough research and evidence to recognize that homeostasis and even doing well and like living authentically, like what we're aware of with our own unique interests, insight, connection with ourselves and other people, and purposeful living
Hmm.
is a balance between like taking care of our mind and body, the mind body connection. And when we can like listen to ourselves and focus on the things that are more within our control, that leads to better outcomes.
Yeah.
But we have to be able to listen. And we know that if we have relationships with other people, the
Yeah.
more that we're aware of what they're
Yeah.
going through and they can communicate insight that we're receptive to.
Yeah.
And that leads to deeper connection with other people. And that leads to more purposeful, meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if we looked at the 8 billion people on this planet and said, hey, do you know how to do this within yourself? And I would say probably most people would raise their hand and say, no, I don't feel
Yeah.
confident. I don't feel
Yeah.
competent. I don't know what type of experiences I need to do.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm constantly troubleshooting. I have self-doubt and
Hmm.
insecurity. I don't know how to do A, B, and C. And we have all these analogies
Hmm.
to help connect to like what is just the microcosm of our human experience.
Hmm.
Because, I will say like a horse by any other name is still a horse. It's like, I understand what that means, but in what context? So when we can understand, like, it's all about balance. How am I balancing things out? Where am I out of balance?
Hmm.
Where is it that things come easier for me? And where would I like get
Hmm.
better by spending less time on my biceps and more time spending or doing leg days when I don't like doing leg days? So
Yeah.
like we could say that whether it's running or the gym or car analogies, if you know something could be true for dog, it's
Yeah.
probably also true for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
it's probably true for your
Right.
car, it's
Right.
also probably
Right.
true for you as a human
Right.
being. If it has something to do with like the moon and that there's like
Right.
different phases of the moon and how it affects water.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? There's different
Yeah.
phases in your like cycle and
Yeah.
things like that
Yeah.
too. So what matters is that like, we're all, and not you, but like we all
Yeah.
are just taking the opportunity to like have awareness and introspection
Hmm.
about ourselves and our own
Yeah.
experiences. Where do I feel balanced? Where I feel misaligned?
Yeah.
Where do I need to get a rotation, tire
Yeah.
rotation
Yeah.
for my
Yeah. Yeah.
wheels and balance things out a little bit? Where is it that I need to spend a little bit of time, maybe less time on the highway and more time in like in
Yeah.
town
Right.
driving to like
Right.
help change? Like, so these are things
Yeah.
that, again, we just know these tidbits. But like, if
Yeah.
we really were just take a few moments to like
Right.
apply them to our own lives,
Right.
I think that takes us to our final kind of stuff with
Yeah.
psychological
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah.
Psychological safety requires feeling some sort of trust
Hmm.
within your environment.
Right. Right.
So if you're hoping to have trust within a team, you have to first focus
Yeah.
on having trust within yourself,
Yes.
that you don't have to be 100% competent in everything. You don't have to
Right.
be 100% confident in everything. I think there's this thing, I don't know exactly what the statistics are with like doctors, but if you're ever with like a doctor that is really, really, really confident, you might want to back off a
Yeah.
little bit,
Yeah.
because they may be not necessarily demonstrating their competence.
Right.
Confidence and competence are not
Sure. Yeah.
necessarily the same
Yeah.
things. So where is it that I feel competent enough and I can be aware of where my limitations are, and I feel
Yeah.
confident in my abilities and also know where my limitations are? That's the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
trust is. Trust is that awareness and that insight
Right.
of like, hey, I know what I can get in this
Right.
environment, and that it's generally supportive of hearing me out,
Hmm.
collaborating, having a
Yeah.
back and forth, and we can be more productive in our teams, in educational settings, when we can be open to not being experts,
Hmm.
but are open to being curious about what the experience is. But it starts with ourselves. We have to do that with
Yeah.
ourselves first and foremost
Yeah.
if we're going to apply it to other relationships. Because if you're not willing to be curious with yourself, you're definitely not going to be willing to be curious with somebody else,
Sure.
as much as you want to tell yourself that you are. So
Yeah. Or maybe it'll
what are some
manifest
of,
in some other way.
yeah,
Like it'll
yeah,
manifest in some other question that's like not coming from a place of curiosity, but from
right. It's a
like the
projection.
pervert, yeah, projection is the perfect where like sometimes it comes out in this other kind of way where you know what you intended to do, but because you can't do this other thing, it's like this other action. Sorry, I
Yeah.
cut you off.
No, but like just kind of adding on to that, it's like, when we have conversations with individuals and
Hmm.
they're not necessarily aware of like how they're projecting their own insecurities.
Yeah.
People who maybe struggle with being okay with like their own experiences and
Hmm.
just kind of like being curious about the truths and the realities
Hmm.
of their own experiences. You are going to, it's not even like likely. It's
Hmm.
like you are going to project your own insecurities onto other people. And they are then, right. And that when we talk about
Yeah.
kids,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
like how you behave around children is how they learn. It's
Hmm.
not, do as I say, not as I do. It's like, that's
Right.
why, again,
Yeah.
we have one of these sayings,
Yeah. Exactly.
is because we have to model and behave. If you
Right.
want your child to trust themselves and to navigate seeking help when they need help or trying things out on their own without, constantly seeking reassurance,
Right.
you have to model that.
Right.
So again, like it comes
Right.
back to the microcosm of your own experience. So if
Yeah.
someone is saying something hurtful to you, you can always ask yourself like, "Ooh, I wonder what they mean for themselves." Or
Yeah.
like
Right. Right.
psychoanalyze, like, well, this
Yeah.
means actually more about them than it does
Yeah.
about
Right.
me. The
Yeah.
kids can't do that.
No.
Kids can't do that.
It's a lot
They just
harder.
embody it.
Yeah. Yeah. They just know
Yeah.
that's the way I have to interact. But if you're able to
Hmm.
model the behavior, this is why I think it's so important to work with adults who work with kids. And I think we spend so much time and energy. Like, if it's actually really, really hard when I'm working with those adults, because every time I ask them a question or I ask for that introspection, their first instinct is to always think about their kids, which is beautiful. But it also makes it really hard for me to like help work on ourselves, right? Like, we always do this. Like, I'm like, cool. Hey, let's talk about fear and like sharing ideas in a group. And they're like, yeah, I have a student who did, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, right. Cause that's all they think about, right? Is their kids. And
Reflect.
I think it's
Reflect.
so, I think it's so beautiful, but it's like so hard, to like challenge them
Mhm.
on it. It's so important that like, hey, when we model, hey, I was wrong about this, or like, hey, I actually don't know the answer and we can figure it out together. Like, just by doing that, you've just showed
Yeah.
that like to this kid, like it's safe to not know the answer. And the second you're like, oh no, that's the whatever, or like I'm the boss and like that's what I do. Like, you've just communicated that like that's what we do as humans, is like we earn reputation and authority by status. And so that's what they've just learned. They're not going to have the language to tell you that. They're not going to be able to explain. No one's going to be able to explain that. But that's what they're figuring out about the world, is like, this is how things work. And so if I need to survive or whatever, like those are the things I'm going to learn how to do. But when
Yeah.
yeah. So it's just straightforward and uncomfortable. And like just one of those
Yeah.
things that we have to sort of do it ourselves, and it works better for kids. I think everything gets easier when there's love. So like if it's like, hey, I made a really big mistake, and here's the kind of like consequence of that. Like it's a lot easier for a kid or whomever to like get the point and like know what to do without necessarily having had it modeled perfectly. So I think there are like stop gaps and like ways out of that, especially for I think a lot of your listeners are parents. And so I think it's the most scary thing in the world to be like, oh my God, am I a bad mom or am I a bad parent? Like, I didn't handle this one thing. And so I made this one mistake and like, what do I do now? And I just think like, damn, if love doesn't just fix so much stuff. So I think there's, it's a broad, imperfect, vague, kind of system, but those are some things that help, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, love in communicating fallibility. So, and love in communicating repair. If you can
Yeah.
communicate that you're fallible and that you're figuring things out, then you can then make repairs. Say, I recognize that what I did
Yeah.
was not the best.
uh,
The repair is so incredibly important. And
Yeah.
I could talk on this particular subject for a
Yeah.
long time because I do a lot of parent coaching,
Yeah.
which I'm also going to provide in my accelerator program when it's up and running, which is an online course where you learn how to do the big key step-by-steps of being
Yeah.
aware of what's going on with your
Yeah.
child, approaching them, regulating your emotions, helping them learn how to regulate their
Yeah.
body and regulate their emotions, connecting and understanding the context of why they did something, and also helping to support their own autonomy and problem solving and even making their own repairs, and you supporting them through that process without
Mhm.
saving them. There is a method to that madness. There
Mhm.
are ways that we can, support. But the number one thing that we do know also about supporting children is if there's kids that are going through therapy, parent coaching is much more effective in supporting
Yeah.
kids that have
Yeah.
needs
Yeah.
than child therapy,
Yeah.
because it's a parent, it's the attachment and the parent feeling like they have the skill set. If
Yeah.
you have a child, it's like their primary caretaker, they're learning the most of all their experiences through their
Yeah.
primary caretaker. So we want those
Yeah.
primary caretakers, the parents, the grandparents, whoever's taking care of them, their teachers, to feel as competent and confident in approaching these conversations, and that they don't have to use the fear tactics and like
Mhm.
status that comes from
Mhm.
fear. Like you don't know
Mhm.
what else to do. And so you're going to
Yes.
overpower it.
Yeah.
It's like, but what happens when you overpower it? It
Yeah.
amplifies, it gets
Right.
worse, or they shut down. And then
Right.
you're wondering why they're not talking, or you wondering why they're throwing a chair across the room. So I know we could talk about those things forever. Maybe you could come back and we could talk more about that
That
deeply.
was fun.
But yeah, just with time where we are today, how about you give us your fundamentals?
Pausing the episode for just a moment, if today's conversation is resonating with you, you can go deeper inside the Fundamentals Life, Relationships, and Career Accelerator, my start to finish, science-backed course on the essential skills of human flourishing. The course is self-paced, structured, practical, and designed to help you build a strong foundation so you can truly thrive across life, relationships, and work. You can join completely free for 14 days. Watch, listen, and learn in whatever ways work best for you and your life. No commitment, cancel anytime. Head to knowyourfundamentals.com or check the link in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the episode.
Ooh, all right. So I think one kind of key fundamental here is that it's too easy to like overcomplicate the neuroscience of fear. I think like the one thing that you can do to help manage this, and we were talking about like the focus kind of goal, and then like using fear to determine, am I ruminating on this or am I, avoiding it? Like I think there's this quick moment of it when you're experiencing fear of just pause, like literal pause, like a breath is just insanely helpful. And we know this, like it's so clear biologically, and we could get into the vagus nerve and how it regulates your heart rate and blood pressure and blah, blah, blah. But like literally taking a quick pause and a breath is like so wildly helpful to your brain to just give step away from a problem for half a second. Your brain works in milliseconds, like just a split second to just look at the problem and be like, get a gut instinct on it. That's not like reactionary. It's just quick thing you can do is literally just take a pause. A second fundamental here is around, I guess we didn't dive too hard into this, but like I think it's relevant to some of the things we talked about, which is the impact of like culture and high performance like people. and I think we think of high performance people in like business and blah, blah, blah. But I'm thinking of it in terms of like educators. Like, what does high performance mean? It means like having great relationships with your students. Students are excelling. Like, your team around you is fully supported, like all of that. One thing that's just like, I feel like an easy way that people get tripped up in this space is the first thing when something goes wrong on their team is they reach for policy. They're like, one person did this thing wrong. So now no one gets to do the whatever. Now that this can't happen, now that Susie did blah, 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 none of us are going to. And now we have a new policy that says blank. It's too easy to reach for policy and start to solve the problem that way. Like, you probably don't have a policy problem. You probably have a culture problem. You probably don't need to write a new policy. You probably need to have a conversation with that one person about that one thing. And that's so uncomfortable that we would rather build a new policy to fix it with this carpet bomb. And like, I had a mentor who used to say, don't punish the innocent. And I just love that articulation of it, because that's exactly what happens. And we don't think of it that way, but that's what we're doing. So I would say, if you're looking at like high performance and you're looking at culture as a fueling factor for that, like considering how you're solving those problems, because I think a lot of us will reach for that policy tool. If that's an instinct for you, like, I just want to throw that flag out, because that might be really, really useful in helping you kind of like build a team and a culture that is high performance based, that's actually like pretty lightweight, and you don't have to get caught up in all the BS. So the last thing, I don't know how we're on time, but I'm going to try to rush through it. The last thing is around psychological safety. If you want to know, psychological safety just means how easy is it for people on your team to share an idea without being ridiculed or like the fear of being shot down. So if you want to know if your team has like solid psychological safety, a quick way to know is have a meeting, get everybody in a room, and have them come up with ideas for something in front of you. And if you are in a position where like the room is silent for a while and it's really hard to elicit, like, you have some work to do. Your job is to be the detective, not the judge. This is the more language that I'm stealing from my mentors. Your job is to be the detective and figure out, like, how do I support, my team? How do I give them the things that they need from a place of genuine curiosity, rather than a place of like, I know why this, I'm going to decide what happens with it. Like that place of authoritarian kind of like, it's just too easy to slip into that mindset of like, well, I would never do it that way. It's like, well, maybe ask why, like, where's that coming from? Where's that behavior manifesting? Like, it's fair to be like, hey, when you do this, it results in this outcome. And that's not how we run our team. And the DNA of our team is based on these values. And so we need to get that outcome. So help me understand, like, how do we support you? And like, what would you do differently knowing that? Or like, like coming from like asking a line of questioning that is supportive and helpful, and like coming from a place of curiosity rather than, why did you do that? Like, when you say why, the first thing people do is get defensive, and now you're in an argument. And like, you did that in one move, you started an argument. So like that would be another kind of like fundamental key behavioral thing you can do, is just when you go into a call or a meeting or a conversation like that, switch in your brain, go find it. It's in there. I know it is. If for every single person listening, there's a switch. Just go look for it. It says judge, detective, and it's just two settings. And your job is just to switch it from judge to detective, and just put on that hat when you're in that conversation, and like, so many things will just be better. So those are a quick couple fundamentals for you, Kelly.
That's fantastic. And I think too, like, it's okay for you to recognize also, whoever you are listening, that you are always going to, or at least a lot of the time, your brain will go into judgment mode, and sometimes really, really hard. So just take a beat, take that breath, and then manually switch it over. Your autopilot is judgment. Manual is detective. And we need to take that pause to like, even just like a moment. If you're like staring like a deer out into space while you're like manually doing that in your brain, then do that. So, but take that pause. So what's your quote today, Chris?
Man, I have one that's so fun, because I think when we think about emotional intelligence, and we think about like people caring about other people, and we think about like conversations, and like, oh, we're going to come from a place of curiosity. Like, it's just too easy for us to be like, man, like, wouldn't it be nice if the world worked that way? Like, wouldn't it be nice if we could whatever? And like, I think you and I had this conversation a second ago on this call about like, wouldn't it be just easier if I didn't care about any of these things? Like, my life would be so much easier, and I could just go make money, and I would be happy if I just didn't care. But one of the authors and business leaders I I listen to and read very much is Seth Godin. And one of my favorite things that he's shared is a quote. It's, "You have an unfair advantage, and it's that you care more." And I think it's so powerful to like flip that upside down a little bit and be like, actually, my motivation, my driving force, that fire inside is because I care so deeply about this outcome. I care so deeply about human beings. I care so deeply about this kid. I care so deeply about things that like I'm going to put in this work. I'm going to chip away at this for the rest of my life. I'm going to like do the work that's required to make this outcome. So I feel like it's too easy for us to say, I wish I just couldn't care. But like treating it like a superpower, man, that's the magic. That's where it's at.
Yeah, it's purposeful living. It's like I could just go do these things, but that's also where, individuals on their deathbeds are saying, if I could have done something differently, it's like, I don't know. I don't know what kind of regrets I'm going to have, other than like, I need to really work on like, again, those other areas of my life where it's just like being more. It's like, oh, I wish I went more hiking. It's like, okay, then I got to schedule that vacation, or I wish I traveled more. So for me, it's recognizing that like, this is a part of my life. Part of my life is this productive, meaningful activity where I'm contributing. And this is where my heart is telling me to contribute. Right. And sometimes when we use that kind of language, like heart, but it's like, this is like soulful living, right? Like my body is like literally pulling me and going in that direction. And a part of it's saying like, I don't have to do that all the time. I can also exist outside of just this sense of like purposeful, meaningful activity. Right.
Yeah.
So, and a purposeful, meaningful activity doesn't have to be a job. I think an entrepreneurial habit that's happening in the 21st century is that like we're all taking like these habits or these hobbies that could be like, I just like doing art. It's like, now I'm making art a business.
Too much to ask. This is a mistake that I should have. I'm glad that you brought this up, because I should have mentioned this at the end of my story, which is it's too much to ask of a job to hit all those check marks. So like when I was like looking at like, oh, it's a perfect dream job and oh, it's a perfect dream job description and blah, 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 blah. Like I scoped that out, but like there was no way that you can get all of it, right? Like it's way too much pressure on the job to get, it's too much pressure on a partner. It's too much pressure on a career. It's too much pressure on any one thing to get everything from it. So like, it's just like, I'm sorry, it's got to be a balance. Like there's no, you can't like turn the one thing into everything. Like that's not realistic.
No, and you'll lose so much. Again, it's like it's a homeostasis. But yeah. So thank you so much for joining us today, Chris. This has been an awesome conversation.
It's so fun. Thanks for hosting and driving.
Yeah. This has been really awesome. So yeah, that's it for this episode.
Get more life, relationships, and career fundamentals when you follow @KnowYourFundamentals on social media. And check out knowyourfundamentals.com for the podcast, blog, fundamentals course, coaching, and to connect with me. Remember, you're the expert on you. Seize the day and thrive your way.